Majora's Mask is a game that stands apart. A pocket-sized world of colossal emotions and daunting mysteries. Its haunting themes and dark beauty have etched themselves into the memories of countless players. The relentless descent of the moon, the enigmatic inhabitants of Termina, and the eerie Majora's Mask itself. These are all a part of a unique tapestry that make this strange but lovable game. To end Mentoktober this year, let's dive into the story and development of Majora's Mask to see what we can uncover about this classic Zelda title. Welcome to Mentoktober. Our story continues after the events of Ocarina of Time, with Link, the hero of time, living out the remainder of his childhood in his peaceful timeline. Link is on a journey to find his fairy friend Navi, who just up and bounced once the timeline was saved. And the crazy thing about this is that Link never sees Navi again. The game doesn't even solve this plotline. The adventure this time begins with a weary Link and his trusted steed Epona, navigating a dense forest, oblivious to the unseen eyes tracking their every move. Two mischievous fairies under the command of Skull Kid ambush Link, and they all steal Link's Ocarina of Time and make off with Epona. Link is led through the forest, dragged by his own horse, and left at the entrance of a mysterious cave. This is where Link finds out how deep the rabbit hole goes. Skull Kid confronts Link once again after getting rid of his horse, but to add insult to injury, he casts a curse on Link, transforming him into a Deku Scrub. And this transformation isn't quick either, it's like he mentally torments Link in some type of advanced genjutsu. Skull Kid runs off deeper into the cave, leaving behind one of the two fairies who we learn is named Tattle. But she kinda deserved this because she stayed behind to bully Link, so it looks like these two are stuck together now. And as Link grapples with the loss of his horse, a body that's not his own, and a snarky fairy companion, he finds himself facing a daunting choice: to plunge deeper into the unknown, where who knows what horrors and adventures await. This guy awaits. Yes, the famous "you've met with a terrible fate, haven't you" guy. This is the proprietor of the Happy Mask shop, who travels far and wide collecting and selling masks. He tells Link that he's on a journey to find a mask that was stolen from him, which as it stands turns out to be the one on Skull Kid's face. The salesman strikes a deal with Link: return to him the Ocarina of Time, and he'll restore Link's normal human form, but in exchange, he must hunt down Skull Kid and retrieve the stolen mask. Oh, and you need to do this in 3 days. And it looks like Mario got his soul stolen here too. So with this objective in mind, our journey unfolds as Link and Tattle step foot into Clocktown, the heart of the land of Termina. But before we delve deeper into this story, if you've ventured through Ocarina of Time's expansive world, you should recognize Skull Kid and the masked salesman already. Skull Kid can be found in the Lost Woods in Ocarina of Time, and is befriended when Link plays Saria's song for him, which earns Link a piece of heart as a gift. It's a pretty minor appearance, but it's interesting nonetheless, since they made him one of the major antagonists here. The masked salesman can be found opening his shop in the Castle Town Market, which gives Link the ability to borrow masks and trade them with people throughout Hyrule. But the reuse of these characters was totally intentional, and we'll talk more about that when we get to the development part of this video. So tangent aside, the player is now free to roam and explore Termina, but it's not long before the game reveals a particular sense of dread that stuck with players for years. This moon is gonna come crashing down in 3 days, destroying everyone and everything in its wake. So Link is more or less helpless in this situation, and by the final day manages to track down Skull Kid at the top of the clock tower. Tattle's brother, Tao, urges Link and his sister to find 4 beings from the swamp, mountain, ocean, and canyon before being swatted aside by Skull Kid, who reigns in the apocalypse. But in a moment of quick thinking, Link hits Skull Kid with a magic bubble blast, managing to grab the Ocarina of Time from him at the very last minute. With the memory of Princess Zelda to guide him, he plays the Song of Time, rewinding the clock to the dawn of the first day. Link has spared Termina some more time. With the Ocarina of Time in hand, Link can now regain his body from the Happy Mask salesman, who teaches him the Song of Healing. With this song, Link is normal again, and the masked salesman has held up his end of the bargain, but is enraged that Link did not bring back the mask as he had promised. This guy's temper tantrums were terrifying back in the day, and y'all can't tell me different. But we learn that the stolen mask is known as Majora's Mask, an accursed item from legend that's said to have been used by some ancient tribe in cursed rituals. Upon its wearer, it bestows great power and channels evil, which explains what happened to poor Skull Kid here. The ancients attempted to seal the mask at some point to prevent it from being misused, but for some reason it's just laying around and this guy wants it. So sure, let's help him out. But more importantly, Tato suggests Link follow her brother's advice and seek out the 4 beings in the 4 regions of Termina. So our objectives are clear and Link officially begins his new adventure. This part of the video is where I take a break from the story and talk about development, so let's do that.
Okay!
After the huge success of Ocarina of Time, Nintendo couldn't afford to let the extensive effort invested in creating that game go to waste without leveraging its game engine and assets for a new project. This time, a more compact team consisting of Eiji Aonuma, Shigeru Miyamoto, and Yoshiaki Koizumi took the helm, determined to craft a follow-up to Ocarina of Time. As you all might know from the last video, the team worked on the Nintendo 64 DD version of Ocarina of Time, an enhanced version of the game with remade dungeons. And this project is what we'd eventually know as Ocarina of Time Master Quest. Eiji Aonuma, on the other hand, didn't want to remake the same dungeons. He began brainstorming new concepts and approached Miyamoto with the idea of creating an entirely new game. Miyamoto agreed to the proposal, but imposed a stringent 1-year deadline, or else the moon would fall and destroy them all. So the race was on, and to meet this tight schedule, they repurposed a significant portion of existing content from Ocarina of Time, significantly reducing their development time. Yoshiaki Koizumi proposed the idea of a 3-day system where players would have to play the same moments over and over again. Originally, the developers toyed with a week-long time frame, but the demands of in-game character schedules led to a shift to a 3-day cycle. That looming moon, descending ominously from the sky, was a unique idea born from the imagination of Koizumi as well. Inspired by his daydream of the actual moon falling to Earth, he decided to incorporate this into the game. In an interview with Famitsu, Koizumi mentions that they drew inspiration from the 1998 film Run Lola Run, where a girl relives the same critical period multiple times, influencing outcomes with each iteration. This idea served as the foundation for Majora's Mask, infusing it with a sense of urgency and depth. And while the gameplay has similarities to its predecessor, Majora's Mask introduced a groundbreaking feature as well, the mask transformation system. Masks aren't merely cosmetic, they became central to the main quest and side quests, adding depth and intrigue to the game itself. But we'll explore some of these masks shortly. Stepping up once again to compose the score was the legendary Koji Kondo, but joining him this time was the talented newcomer Toru Minagishi. Majora's Mask marked Minagishi's debut in the Zelda series, a journey that would see him contribute to other beloved titles like The Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, and later on, the Splatoon series. Interestingly enough, Minagishi is also the mind behind that iconic GameCube startup jingle. Before its official release, Majora's Mask would be known as Zelda Gaiden, or Zelda Side Story. The name Majora itself is a unique localization of the Japanese Mujura's Mask, a playful fusion of the art director Takaya Imamura's name and Jura, inspired by his love of Jurassic Park. I always thought the origins of that name would be a lot more profound, but here we are. So Majora's Mask made its debut on the Nintendo 64 in April 2000 in Japan, and later that year in October in North America. So yes, it's been 23 years since this game was released, and you should feel old. Anyway, we head back to Termina. Link has his body back, and with only Tal's clue about the 4 places to go on, Link and Tato must travel to 4 different dungeons in Termina to free 4 giants from the evil lurking within those dungeons. And while there are only 4 major dungeons in this game, what I think really sets this apart from the rest of the series is its very unique side quest. The game is stuffed with all of these weird encounters that sometimes leave you asking more questions, or they might just bring a tear to your eye. If you're not making a beeline to the end of the game, Link can meet several different characters within Termina, all with their own schedules in this 3-day time frame. This contributes to remarkable world building and helps give these citizens even more colorful personalities than what we experienced in Ocarina of Time. One of the most popular side quests is that of Kafei and Anju, the only side quest that will take the entire 3-day cycle to complete. These 2 individuals promised to marry when they were children and planned that they would have that destined day occur during the Carnival of Time, the event that takes place on the final day when the moon is plunging into Termina. So when Link meets Anju, she asks him to keep an eye out for her fiancé, as he suddenly disappeared with his wedding ceremony mask just a month before the actual wedding, while her mother is accusing him of running off with her best friend. Anju is afraid of finding out the truth, worried that Kafei disappeared because of her. Link will eventually encounter Kafei, who's been turned into a child by the Skull Kid, and to make matters worse, his wedding mask was stolen while he was on his way to ask the Great Fairy for help. If you manage to see this quest to its end, you can find Anju in her room in the last few hours of the final day, pledging to wait for her fiancé in her final minutes. The lovers will reunite in this moment, exchanging vows and staying right where they are to face whatever fate may befall them. Please take refuge. We're fine here. We shall greet the morning together.
Nope.
Aonuma said, quote, "The inspiration for that particular side quest actually came shortly after Ocarina of Time when I went to a wedding party for one of the members of our staff. At the time we were thinking about what sorts of events we could include in Majora's Mask, and I was talking with Mr. Koizumi, who directed the game with me. And we said to each other, I can't recall seeing weddings portrayed in a game like this before. It would be really interesting if you had 3 days leading up to the wedding, but there was this horrible cataclysm happening alongside it. That could be really impactful, we thought." Okay, Zelda aside for a second, imagine your friends having a conversation like this at your wedding. Either way, we got one of the most touching scenes in the game because of this moment. Then there's the mystery of the Romani Ranch, a place where you meet Romani and her older sister Cremia as they deal with the threat of creatures simply known as them. Oh look, Epona's alive. When you first meet Romani, she'll ask for your help whenever they come, which already sets the tone of a rather sinister force looming over this ranch. Cremia, on the other hand, as the elder sister, has a responsibility to run the ranch due to the passing of their father, her mind preoccupied with things going wrong on the ranch ever since she took over. We find out later that this is the result of sabotage from the Gorman brothers from a rival ranch. So with all of these issues going on, Cremia doesn't have much time to spend with Romani. Little does she know, if you wait until nighttime on the ranch on the night of the first day, they will appear. Yep, straight up aliens, here to steal cows and everything else. So it's up to Link to stop them from approaching the ranch, and if he fails, they will beam up the cows and Romani along with them. This doesn't even trigger a game over though. Time moves on and we'll see Romani back at the ranch the next day, traumatized and dead inside from her time of being abducted. According to Aonuma, there was a UFO boom in Japan happening at the time this game was developed, and he said, quote, "Thought it would be really interesting and scary to use in a game. That's why we decided to go with that."
Sensational.
Of course, if Link manages to hold off the invasion, this opens the door to more side quests, and ultimately Romani and Cremia will have a closer relationship through Link's actions. Okay, if that one wasn't weird enough for you, how about this hand sticking out of the toilet? If Link enters the restroom of the Stockpot Inn on any night between 12 AM and 6 AM, this hand will surface from the toilet asking for paper. You can simply give it any letter items you may have or title deeds and it will be satisfied, rewarding Link with a piece of heart that fell into the toilet. I would ask how exactly that fell in, but there's literally a hand sticking out of a toilet here. This hand would also make an appearance in Oracle of Ages and Skyward Sword, and during the time of the release of Skyward Sword, Entertainment Weekly would ask Miyamoto about this. In a couple of different Zelda games, there's a mysterious hand that appears that's never really explained. In Skyward Sword, the hand appears in a toilet. Can you explain to me what that hand is? Miyamoto responds, "In the original Legend of Zelda game, a gigantic hand appears and grabs you at the entrance to a dungeon. Actually, that has nothing to do with Skyward Sword." It's actually something from a Japanese ghost story, not a specific ghost story. There are some ghost stories in Japan where, when you're sitting in the bathroom in the traditional style of the Japanese toilet, a hand is actually trying to grab you from beneath. It's a very scary story. The last side quest I'll cover is one of my favorites, and that's the story of Pamela and her father at the Music Box House. In Ikana Canyon, there is a special house with a water wheel that plays a song known as Farewell to Gibdos, a special song used to drive away Gibdos and other evil spirits in the area. But when Link first arrives to the house, the river has dried up, causing the water wheel powering it to come to a stop. So it's surrounded by Gibdos now, and inside the house is a girl named Pamela who refuses to open the door for Link, believing that he's one of those Gibdos attempting to take her father away. Link can discover the source of the water drying up, which turns out to be a man named Sharp who put a curse on the spring water cave, which can be undone with the Song of Storms. Once Link has the water flowing again, the Music Box House plays the melody again that drives away the Gibdos, and Link can now sneak into the house where he'll find Pamela's father locked inside the basement, half mummified, struggling to hold on to his humanity. Once he plays the Song of Healing, her father can be healed of his curse, allowing us to witness this touching scene. These contained but powerful stories within Majora's Mask make this game as memorable as it is. And with the final days hovering over the heads of the people of Termina, it makes each of these stories more impactful the deeper you dig in. Let me know your favorite side quest in the comments below, because I know I'm missing a few here. But within these side quests, the theme of masks still rings true, as Link can obtain collectible masks as a reward for completion. For example, seeing the Anjo and Cafe quest to its end will have them gift Link with the couple's mask, or while Pamela has this tear-jerking reunion with her cured father, a Gibdo mask will be on the floor for Link to collect. There are 20 collectible masks in all, which excludes the 3 transformation masks that Link will obtain throughout the story. These 3 masks are crucial to plot progression and include the Deku mask, Goron mask, and Zora mask, allowing Link to transform into these 3 races and use their abilities. If this game wasn't dark enough though, each of these transformation masks represent a deceased individual from each race, like the Goron mask for instance, embodying the soul of Darmani III, a Goron hero that was a great warrior of the tribe who succumbed to a fall from the mountains of the Snowhead region due to a blizzard. The Deku mask is from the dead son of the butler who served the Deku King. You encounter him at the very beginning of the game as a withered tree, his soul turned to a mask by the Skull Kid to curse Link. And to take it a step further, it was always a bit jarring seeing Link have to go through what seems like a painful transformation every time. Aonuma would actually be asked about these transformations by Game Informer and why it looked like it hurt so much for Link, to which he responded, "We're talking about masks that were created to contain the memories of people who have died. Often there are things they really wanted to do before they left this world, so becoming them is actually really painful because it's like hosting a really powerful spirit that's coming into you." After reading all of these interviews, I wonder why Aonuma hasn't directed an all-out horror game yet. So we head back to our main plot. Link travels to each region, guided by the advice of Tao. The first being the southern swamp and home to the Deku Kingdom, where he frees the spirit of the Mask of Odalwa, the major boss for that area. Next is Snowhead Mountain, the home of the Gorons, where Link defeats Goat at Snowhead Temple to free the second giant. The third giant is liberated from Hjorg in the Great Bay, home of the Zoras, and finally in the Ikana Canyon, Link will take on Twin Mold to free the final giant.
Light work, no reaction.
For those who engaged in conversations with Anju's grandmother throughout the game, they were treated to a fascinating nugget of lore about these giants. In the distant past, before the land of Termina was fractured into 4 regions, a single realm thrived with the presence of 4 benevolent giants. And these mighty beings made a pact to watch over the land's inhabitants, and if they were ever needed, a powerful call would summon them. But of course, there's a dark twist to this tale. One imp, feeling abandoned by his giant friends, spiraled into bitterness and began sowing discord across the 4 worlds. In response to this menace, the people of Termina resorted to summoning the giants, leading to an act of exile. The imp was even more saddened that his old friends would threaten him, so he returns to the heavens to hide out from their anger, and peace was restored to the 4 worlds. This is a pretty obvious tale of Skull Kid's origins, and I think the implication here is that he was exiled from Termina and found himself spending his time in the lost woods of Hyrule. But let's see what he has to say for himself later at the end of the game. Each of these regions that Link visits has its own problems caused by the Skull Kid, which harkens back to the setup of Ocarina of Time and Ganon's influence on Hyrule. The swamp of the Deku Kingdom has been poisoned, and their princess kidnapped, all while the Deku King is trying to put this monkey to death for what happened to the princess. The Snowhead region is suffering an eternal winter as the Gorons can only look to a transformed Link for hope, thinking he's actually their tragic hero Darmani III who's come to save the day. In the Great Bay, a Zora guitarist gives his dying wish to Link to save his vocalist Lulu's eggs that he was mortally wounded trying to retrieve from pirates. And Ikana Canyon, a region filled with the undead after Skull Kid cast a curse, causing these monsters to run amok and roam free. The situation in Termina seems dire, and many have lost their lives or have been irreversibly cursed from the actions of Skull Kid. And much like the side quest I mentioned earlier, each of these situations seem catastrophic, but there's this persistent theme of hope and acceptance that shines through all of these stories, with Link serving as the catalyst. All of these major quests and side quests must be completed while the player keeps an eye on the 3-day cycle, but with the Ocarina of Time, Link has tools at his disposal to slow down or speed up time if need be, which comes in handy so you're not rushing or waiting around too much throughout the game. Despite this, the 3-day cycle can still become a bit tedious, especially if you're a completionist. I think we tend to look back a lot on the story aspects of this game, which I think is what makes it shine, but I have to mention that the time constraints do make certain parts of this a bit rough. It's Speaking of story, apologies, but I'm going to be going a bit heavy on the plot for the next few minutes, so bear with me. Once all the giants are free, the player can now face Skull Kid on the final day at the top of the clock tower. It's time for your fated rematch. The sequence of events will begin very similar to the first fight, but this time Link is prepared. He whips out his ocarina and plays Oath to Order to summon the 4 giants that he freed, all coming to his aid as they stop the moon from its descent. I still think this scene is awesome. I can't put my finger on why, but it just is. With the moon stopped, Tal and Tattle are reunited, but this is not over yet. This is where we find out Majora's Mask itself was the one causing all the harm in the first place, taking advantage of a lonely Skull Kid to do its bidding. With this in mind, the mask throws Skull Kid aside and ascends into the moon to consume the world. So we gotta head inside and finish him off. Huh, that's not what I was expecting. So if you went out of your way to complete all the side quests in the game, there's one last strange occurrence that happens before it's time to face the final boss. Within the moon are these 4 children, all wearing the mask of the bosses you've faced up to this point. And at the center, a child wearing Majora's Mask. If you offer up your collectible mask to these children, they'll put you through hide and seek trials, testing your skills with each of the transformation masks. But as you find these children in each trial, they'll start asking these thought-provoking questions like, if you do the right thing, does it really make everybody happy?
Damn!
But by the end of the last trial, you would have given up all of your collectible masks. So when it's time to speak with the kid who has Majora's Mask on, he gives you the Fierce Deity's Mask, the last transformation mask and the most powerful mask in the game. It allows Link to transform into a Super Saiyan adult version of himself essentially, but I find the description of the mask pretty interesting. Could this mask's dark powers be as bad as Majora? If all of these transformation masks possesses the soul of a deceased individual, whose soul is inside this mask? This isn't really answered in game, but Game Informer did present this question to Aonuma as well. The best I can give you is just a suggestion. The best way to think about it is that the memories of all the people of Termina are inside of the Fierce Deity mask. Personally, this feels like a hand wave to me, but I'll take that explanation. And there's also these kids within the moon here. Who are they? They somewhat resemble the mask salesman, and one of them even says to Link, "Masks, you have a lot. You too will be a mask salesman?" People still speculate the meaning of these scenarios to this day, but let's get to the ending first before I present the theories. So the child with Majora's Mask asked to play a game of good guys against bad guys, with Link playing the bad guy. It's time for the final showdown with Majora's Mask. Link will have to face the evil within the mask itself, which evolves into 2 different forms, Majora's Incarnate, which for some reason is doing a whole Russian squat dance, and the final form, Majora's Wrath, a whole ass demon. Sometimes I think game developers ask themselves how they could scare the piss out of children back in the early 3D days. Anyway, once Majora's Wrath is defeated, it evaporates from existence along with the moon that placed the future of Termina in the balance. Peace is restored, and Termina can once again see the dawn of a new day. We see Skull Kid make peace with the 4 giants once again, reassuring him that he is still their friend, and they return to the 4 corners of the land to continue watching over the people. Skull Kid, overwhelmed with emotion, makes peace with the situation and asks to be Link's friend as well, remembering the time where he played Saria's song for him in the Lost Woods. Just as a quick aside, this line here is debated whether it's Link or Saria that Skull Kid is referring to. I guess I'll leave that one up for you guys to decide, but I believe the main implication here is that this is the same Skull Kid you befriend in the Lost Woods. Even though I know there's multiple, I think they're trying to highlight that this is the same one. With the evil fully purged from Majora's Mask, Link holds up his end of the bargain with the mask salesman, who finally claims the mask and bids everyone farewell before disappearing. So Link, Skull Kid, Tattle, and Tal part ways, with Link heading back to Hyrule as the Carnival of Time can finally go on without a hitch. The credits give some closure to the people of Termina that Link meets along the way, like showing the wedding of Anju and Kafei, or Romani and Cremia practicing archery together, and in the final shot, we see Link continuing through the forest as we zoom into a drawing carved into a tree stump, with Skull Kid, Link, the fairies and the four giants being friends. And this is where we say goodbye to this incarnation of Link as a main character. Majora's Mask is a Zelda title that leaves a lot for discussion even to this day. Like, the world of Termina itself is somewhat of a mystery, but is mostly chalked up as a parallel dimension to Hyrule, which I wouldn't think is too far-fetched since we've seen a few Zelda games already tread that territory. Somehow Link falls into this realm after chasing down a possessed Skull Kid, much like Alice stumbling into Wonderland, and if we take the legends of the four giants scaring off Skull Kid into another world, it makes a lot of sense that he fled to Hyrule to escape their anger, hiding out there before discovering Majora's Mask, which probably gave him the power and courage to return to wreak havoc in Termina in the first place. At some points within these events, he befriended Tatl and Tal, who helped support him when he felt the giants abandoned him. There are other theories from the Zelda Encyclopedia which hardcore Zelda fans don't seem to fully subscribe to, but it's worth mentioning nonetheless. Their explanation says that after stealing Majora's Mask, a combination of the burdens in the Skull Kid's heart and the evil magic within the mask transformed Termina into this land of races and people, constructed from Skull Kid's memories and imagination, including the four giants as well. I don't know if there's much to prove this, so I agree it's a little strange this would be in a Zelda encyclopedia, but I would love to hear everyone's thoughts in the comments about that. Another mystery I see heavily discussed is the identity of the mask salesman, which isn't really answered within the game either. But it seems to be hinted at that he's some sort of magical being, whether that be a deity of some sort or just some guy with powers, which isn't too out of place in Hyrule if you think about it. I do think that this is meant to be a mystery left open to interpretation and doesn't have one true answer, but seeing as the children of the moon resemble him, it does leave more questions than answers. So while Majora's Mask didn't surpass Ocarina of Time in sales, it was one of the highest grossing games of that year, selling over 1 million copies, and in 2015 got a full remaster for the Nintendo 3DS. Many Zelda enthusiasts enjoy looking at this game under a finer microscope, drawn in by its more mature themes, but much like the game itself dealing with a 3-day time loop, I think with every playthrough of this game, there's always something new to discover, and new emotions to feel with these contained stories. As we close out Mentoktober for this year, I think this game has really appropriate subject matter since it's often remembered for its darker and horror-related aspects. That uneasy sense of dread, coupled with that cozy feeling of acceptance and love that we see throughout this game, I think it deserved to be talked about on its own. While the gameplay itself may feel a bit dated, the story structure and the character relationships here truly stand the test of time.